Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your effort so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for almost a decade, and I've achieved a 99th percentile score on the GMAT and helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS think our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go. Welcome to Real GMAT Problems, episode 20. Doing real GMAT problems can help make test day a lot more familiar. So let's walk through a few examples together. The problems that we're going to go through are from the 11th edition of the Official Guide for GMAT Review, and you can web search them if you'd like to follow along visually. Just so you know, the 11th edition of the Official Guide for GMAT Review is out of print, and that's partly why I'm going through questions from that book, because that way, if you purchase this year's official guide, there shouldn't be any overlap between those questions and the questions we're going to work through together here. The official guide is full of retired GMAT questions that have appeared on past GMAT exams, and the exam is designed to change slowly over time. So these are going to be very representative of the kinds of questions that you're going to see on test day. I'll give you a chance to work through the solution on your own, and then I'll discuss my thoughts on the problem and my recommendations for what to learn from each one. I recommend pausing after I read through each problem and trying to solve it, or at the very least visualize how you would solve it. And you might not be able to execute all the steps in your head, but just do your best. If you're in a situation where you can physically write things down like you would on test day, like if you're on a plane or something, then that works very well. Let's go. This is problem number 67. There's a formula at the top of the problem. I'm going to read that, and then there's some text below that. I'll read that, and then I'll read the formula again and the text again before I read the answers, okay? So the formula is R, the variable R, equals 400, and then times, in parentheses, d plus s minus p at the top of a fraction, d plus s minus p at the top of a fraction. Below the fraction bar is just the variable p. So the full equation is R equals 400 times, in parentheses, d plus s minus p over p. The text says, if stock is sold 3 months after it is purchased, the formula above relates P, D, S, and R, where P is the purchase price of the stock, D is the amount of any dividend received, S is the selling price of the stock, and R is the yield of the investment as a percent. If Rose purchased $400 worth of stock, received a $5 dividend, and sold the stock for $420 for 3 months after purchasing it, what was the yield of her investment according to the formula, assuming she paid no commissions? So it seems like quite a lot on the surface, but really we're just given this formula, and then we're given a situation that gives us some numbers to plug into the formula. So let me give that one more read, and then I'll read the answer options for you. So the formula is R equals 400 times, in parentheses, D plus S minus P as the numerator of a fraction, and then the denominator of that same fraction is P. If stock is sold 3 months after it is purchased, the formula above relates P, D, S, and R, where P is the purchase price of the stock, D is the amount of any dividend received, S is the selling price of the stock, and R is the yield of the investment as a percent. If Rose purchased $400 worth of stock, received a $5 dividend, and sold the stock for $420 for 3 months after purchasing it, what was the yield of her investment, according to the formula, assuming she paid no commissions? Option A is 1.25%. Option B is 5%. Option C is 6.25%. Option D is 20%. And option E is 25%. So I recommend you hit pause here if you want to work through this on your own, and I would recommend at least trying that out. It's a really interesting question that appears quite complicated on the surface, I think, yet the math ends up really working out quite well and not being nearly as tough as it might seem on the surface. This does not always happen, so it's definitely worth appreciating when it does happen. Let's dive into a potential solution path, and then we'll discuss why so many people are picking option C here, as in Charlie, which is not the right answer. So first things first, there are so many variables and quantities to keep track of here that it's really easy to get lost, mixed up, or both. So one of the best things that you can do is take your time writing everything given in a very organized way. I've probably said this a ton of times before if you've been a follower of the show for a while, but most long word problems are more of an organizational challenge than they are a mathematical challenge. And I think that can just be a little bit surprising for folks. It's not true 100% of the time. I want to be clear about that, but I would say it's true at least 80% of the time that word problems are more organizationally challenging than mathematically challenging. There's certainly some tough math and some word problems out there 20% of the time. But because it's almost impossible to be organized and as a result, get worse results from your work, it's a very, very worthwhile investment, in my opinion. Now, that, of course, brings us to the subject of time pressure, which is very significant for most people taking the GMAT quant section. So I think that begs the question, how do I balance time pressure and being organized? And it's a very, very good question. So I'll be honest and say it's going to be a little bit of a process of discovery for you, probably, to figure out what that optimal balance is for you personally. I've found everybody to be just a little bit and maybe even a lot different in some situations around that balance. Some people should be writing more, some people should be moving quicker. And that also might change as your skill set develops a little bit. So I want you to know, like, it's okay if you're constantly re-optimizing that balance. And I'm not going to pretend to know every single detail of every single one of your situations personally. That's not going to be the case. Having said that, I have gone through this process a boatload of times with many, many different types of learners. And one thing that I've found that really helps a lot and is super unlikely to hurt and cause problems is just defining all your variables 100% of the time. What I mean by defining variables is writing the variable, an equal sign, and then what that variable represents in the problem, like in English. It's a comically simple thing to do, and yet it really decreases risks on problems like this one to a big extent in my experience. So it does cost a little bit of time though. So I see a lot of people resist it and not do it. So I'm just going to encourage you to set a count up timer and write down what each variable represents in problems like this, or just like watch the timer go up after you write them down and just actually see how long it takes you on clock time versus just your own personal perception of time. I think a lot of people feel like it takes a really long time and then they're like, oh my gosh, that took me like 3 seconds. So yeah, that's just a good way to kind of like data validate our feelings. And maybe it is taking you an extra 30 seconds on every question to define your variables. And maybe that's not the right balance of things for you. But I've found in the vast, vast, vast majority of cases, this is a good, simple technique that you can adopt to keep yourself safe and efficient on problems like this. And it's one of those things where it's probably worth thinking about it as an investment. Yeah, it does cost time, but it saves you time later of not having to get the wrong answer and resolve the question, which is a huge, huge time sink for a lot of people. So again, after you time it, you can make your own judgment call about how you should approach these kinds of questions and whether defining variables is for you. But again, just kind of tying off this point, like I don't know exactly what you personally need to do to find the right balance of accuracy and speed, what I'll call efficiency. But I've given just hopefully just an abundance of tips about how you can discover that for yourself across all the pod of the now many years we've been doing this. And I'm going to give you a few more tips in today's lesson, but I really have found that defining variables thing to be like a good hitter, probably 99.999% of people I've seen go through this process. So that I thought would be a good general piece of advice. Yeah, so highly recommend that. Additionally, this is also a great example of a problem where writing what's given and asked is super helpful, but I've already talked about that extensively in this Real GMAT problem series, so let's assume that point has been made. Pretty much all I'm going to do on this problem and the solution is write what's given and asked in an organized way, like I was just talking about, and take the time to clearly define my variables, like I was just talking about. Let me just show you how that might help me get the problem right more easily and also help me avoid what I think is the biggest pitfall for people based on the data here. So let's start with writing the given equation carefully. Maybe this goes without saying, but that's probably the most important first step in this problem is making sure you don't make a mistake copying down the formula they give you. So let's assume that that's simple and obvious. But if you do find yourself making a lot of transcription errors with formulas, which is definitely something that happened to me a lot when I was studying, just build the habit of double checking everything that you write down. So you write it down and then you look at the screen and say, like, did I write this down properly? And just double check it. super simple habit, but can really pay dividends. That's less universal than the whole defining variable thing. So you might not be in that camp, but it was a big problem for me, and it was a really simple but really powerful solution. So I thought I would share just in case it helps you. If you don't make those kinds of mistakes ever, though, just don't worry about double checking things. So that's what I would do. I'd copy down the formula that they gave me, the whole R equals bit, and then I would double check to make sure that I copied that down properly. And then I'm just going to define all my variables that they tell me in the problem next. So P, I'm going to write P equals purchase price. I probably would just write purchase because usually there's no need to be obsessive about capturing every single word. You're looking for a balance that's functional, but also enough to keep you from making mistakes. Again, that's something that's probably going to require some experimentation on your part. So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to make mistakes on practice problems where you didn't write down enough or wrote down too much. And you can just refine that over time. It's not going to take you too long to find a good balance for yourself. And then if that changes over time, like as you get more skilled, you need to do that less, or as you get more skilled, you need to do that more. That's super normal. Yeah, so don't fear re-optimizing that over time. So I would write P equals purchase. I would write D equals dividend. I would write S equals selling price. And then I would write R equals yield as a percent. And I actually would personally write as a percent down since I've made mistakes based on that kind of thing in the past. For example, one answer might be 25 and another answer might be 0.25. And if the problem says as a percent and I get 25, then I'm going to pick the integer 25. But if it does not say as a percent, then I would pick 0.25. So check out our decimals math basics episode that's linked below if you're unsure how something like that works with percents and decimals, or if it's just been a long time and you want a refresher on that. But again, I guess just harping on this, like that's a good example of something that I re-optimized over time where I probably started writing like R equals yield, and then I missed a few problems as a result of not writing as a percent. And so then I just adopted the habit of as a percent. That served me well. So I didn't re-optimize and delete that over time. So I don't know how helpful that is, but it's just a concrete example of the kind of like discovery process that I'm recommending that you engage with here with your scratch work, what you're writing down and how much or how little you should to get the results you want to see. So what's really interesting in this problem is that next we're just given every value that we need to solve for R. So that's why I was saying like it kind of works out well, and that doesn't always, it's not always that nice on harder questions. So we're going to appreciate it when it is that nice. Coincidentally, R is what we're being asked to solve for. So it should be no big deal to just plug in all these values as long as we don't make a mistake. So right to the right of where I wrote P equals purchase, I would just write equals 400 because they tell me that's what Rose buys. I would do the same with D equals dividend. I would just write equals 5. Next to S equals selling price, I would write equals 420. And then hopefully I realize I can just plug in all those values to the formula and solve. So that's what I'm going to do. If I do that, I get R equals 400 times, in parentheses on top, 5 plus 420 minus 400. And then on the bottom of that fraction inside the parentheses is just 400. That's P for the purchase price. So let's just do the math in the numerator left to right. I'd recommend listening to the PEMDAS episode if you're not 100% sure how to handle these kinds of situations, or if you're just getting started with this process and you're like, holy smokes, PEMDAS, haven't thought about that in a while. Then we've got that episode there for you, since most of us start at that point where it's been maybe a decade or two since we've done this kind of thing by hand. And it'll all come back, or you'll relearn it or learn it better than you even did the first time. And it's fine. Many of us have gone through that. It's totally doable. If we perform that math, then that would get us R equals 400 times in the parentheses 25 over 400. So if I rewrote that just for the sake of clarity as 400 over 1 times 25 over 400, hopefully you'd see that the 400s cancel out. Check out the math basics episode on fractions if you're not sure how canceling works or you want to reskill with that. And that's just going to leave us with R equals 25. And that is our correct answer, which is option E as in echo. So hopefully, if everything was organized enough, that one wasn't too bad for you. And if you need help with the basic math behind the problem, I'm really hopeful that the episodes I mentioned will help a lot. Let's talk about option C, as in Charlie. So this is the most common wrong answer. A lot of people are picking C. Any idea how someone might wind up with 6.25%, even though the answer is 25%? A full 6% of people are making this mistake on this problem. Thought about it, considered some different ways that people could get there, and my best guess, is that comes from not writing or rewriting the 400 when you copy down the formula of r equals 400 times blah, blah, blah in the parentheses. So either people don't write that 400 at the beginning of the problem, or they write it at the beginning of the problem and then it disappears as they do the rest of the math inside the parentheses. And they just run the math inside the parentheses and they get 25 over 400 and they think, oh, cool, 25 over 400 kind of looks like a percent. And then they just forget that last step that we did of multiplying by the 400 outside the parentheses. And the reason I think that's probably the way people are getting that is 25 over 400 would give me 0.0625, which is 6.25%. So yeah, that's definitely a pitfall here. Couple things. I mean, it is a potential argument for writing as a percent next to the variable r, like I was talking about I like to do. And that's because technically 25 over 100, like I said, is 0.0625. And if I was thinking, wait, r is supposed to be as a percent and 0.0625% is not an option, then that might be just enough of a doubt in my mind to be like, oh, shoot, I might have messed something up and then like recheck and realize like, oh, gosh, I almost forgot to divide by 400 there, which is, it's a super understandable mistake to make, especially if you consider the time pressure and the stakes and all the other stuff that we're dealing with on the exam. So that's one potential way that we could safeguard ourselves from doing something like that. Yeah, so I other tips there, I already gave some suggestions about how to avoid that kind of thing, and hopefully those will serve you at least as well as they've served me. So just to rehash those, that's double checking formulas after I write them down so that you don't miss the 400 on the first time you transcribe it, because usually what makes it onto your page is what you're going to start to operate on when you start going into the doing math phase of the problem, as it were. And then also the defining variables thing is a good safety check there. And then just writing what's given and what's asked on a regular basis and making that a habit, which I've harped on so much in the past, should really, really help out with not getting 6.25 here. So I think that's probably about that for that problem. If you have questions about anything that we're talking through here, you can reach us at any time at the GMAT strategy on current social channels, or you can email us if you prefer, contact at thegmatstrategy.com, CONTACT at thegmatstrategy.com. Just reach out anytime. We're happy to help if you have questions or feedback or something's not clicking for you. When you're ready, let's try another one here. This is problem number 68. The problem says the temperature in degrees Celsius recorded at 6 in the morning in various parts of a certain country were 10, 5, -2, -1, -5, and 15. What is the median of these temperatures? I'm going to read that again. The temperature in degrees Celsius recorded at 6 in the morning in various parts of a certain country were 10, 5, -2, -1, -5, and 15. What is the median of these temperatures? Option A is -2. Option B is -1. Option C is 2. Option D is 3. And option E is 5. Again, I recommend pausing here if you'd like to give this one a shot. Okay, so hopefully this one is super simple for you if you listen to our previous episode about medians. Just in case this is your first step in the GMAT process and you're like just getting this going right now, or in case it's been a while since you thought about what a median is, the definition of median is the middle number of an ordered list, meaning the list goes from least to greatest or from greatest to least. The list needs to be in order. If there is an odd number of terms in the list, the median is the average of the two middle values. I hate to say it, but that is pretty much the long and short of this problem. Having said that, I'll give you a guess as to how many people get this problem wrong, percentage-wise. I'd be very curious to hear what all of you would say. What percent of people do you think get this question incorrect? This is future business leaders of the world, of course. Very bright, very hardworking, very intelligent and industrious group of people. And yet, 16% of the people who attempt this problem are getting it wrong. So 16% of us are missing a problem that is about the definition of a median, and we want to go to graduate school. We want to run the biggest and best businesses in the world. Let's try to clean up our act a bit together, everybody, and take responsibility for our community of business leaders. Let's be the change that we want to see in the world and become a bit more detail oriented, a bit more methodical, and a bit more capable of getting questions about medians right 100% of the time. I think we would all agree that this is at least one tiny step in the right direction toward our goals and visions of the future. So, there are also some other common mistakes, but let's just talk through a correct solution before we talk about the pitfalls, and I think that'll be a good way to organize the learning process for you. So here's how we might do it correctly. You may recall from our previous episode that my strongest two pieces of advice on median questions were number one, memorize the definition of the median, which I just talked you through, and number two, when you are confronted with a median question on test day, write out the numbers in order. They are not always going to give you the list in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. Many times you have to put it in order as part of solving the problem. So I also gave one additional tip, which was to write the numbers as given from the problem, so not in order, and then write them in order under that first list that you copied from the problem and cross off each number in the upper list as you do so. I've found that to be a really good visual safety net for people so that they don't end up omitting numbers, which is a big risk, actually, when people are looking up at the screen and then back at the page and then up at the screen and then back at the page. So that way, everything that's given makes it onto your page, and then you can reorganize it all on the page. And I've noticed that that greatly cuts down on the number of mistakes people make with these kinds of questions. So if I did that, and then I ordered the numbers, I would get the list -5, -2, -1, 5, 10, 15. Hopefully, you will notice that there are 6 numbers in the list, and that means that we will want to take the 2 middle values and average those. The 2 middle values are -1 and 5. If it's been a while since you computed an average, averages are just the sum of the terms divided by the number of terms. So let's sum -1 and 5 to make 4. Then we're going to divide by 2, since there are 2 terms, -1 and 5. So we would get 4 divided by 2 equals 2. And we are good to go. That is the correct answer, which is option C, as in Charlie. So like I said, I think if you know the definition of median and you put the list in order, like things are going to go pretty darn well. So I was really surprised, as maybe you were as well, to think like 16% of people are getting this wrong. I thought that was kind of crazy. So any idea why so many people are picking B? B is -1. And 6% of people are going for -1. Any idea why that might be happening? If you recall, this is my guess. I don't know for sure, but this is my guess. If you recall the original order of the list as given, which is 10, 5, -2, -1, -5, and 15, then 1 is the middle value. So yeah, or like -1 is one of the middle values. Sorry, technically the 2 middle values are -2 and -1. So that's one reason that people might be doing that, because we have the way that it's written is there's an and right before the 15. So the way the list is presented is 10, 5, -2, -1, -5, and the word and 15. And so it kind of makes it seem like -1 is just in the middle visually. Yeah, so that's one reason that people might be picking -1 there. That was the best I could come up with. I couldn't really get the math to work out to -1. So maybe if some of you got that, or can shed some light on that for me, why 6% of people are doing that, and it's not the reason I just mentioned, I'd be curious to hear your analysis. Yeah, so I think what's happening there is people have half the definition of median memorized. They maybe remember from school like it's in the middle somewhere. And if you're just starting out, let's just be fair, it's a completely understandable mistake to make. Not trying to chastise anyone here, but obviously we don't want to be missing questions based on definitions like that. Okay, there's a lot at stake here, so please just memorize the full and proper definition of medians, and you won't pick answers like B. The second most common incorrect option is D, which is 3. Curious, any idea why 4% of people here are picking D? Interestingly, I thought about this one too. I tried a couple different ways to get 3, but 3 is what you get if you average positive 1 and 5 instead of negative 1 and 5. So, like, you do all the correct strategic steps, but then you just miss that negative sign or drop the negative sign in your scratch work or in your head. I think we've probably all forgotten a negative sign here and there. We're all human, so let's not be too harsh. But at the same time, let's do our best not to repeat mistakes that are as avoidable as that one. So just make sure that you track all your negative signs as you solve. You might not be able to control how you feel under time pressure. A lot of people feel really stressed under time pressure, but you can control how you respond to those feelings. We can't always control our feelings, but we can control our responses. So if you condition yourself to always write things down clearly, in fact, write things down even more clearly the more stress that you feel, which is something I've talked about in the past here, you'll be in a great position to avoid missing problems like this one. Now, there's all kinds of other things you can do to relieve stress on the exam, like meditation, getting professional help, and we've done multiple episodes on anxiety if you want some support on that. But one of the simplest things is just as you feel the stress rise, just write more stuff down. And you'll be in a great position to avoid missing questions like this one, which, let's be honest, I think people should not be missing. But it happens, obviously. The data's there. So next best thing we can do, I think, is try to help. And that's a huge reason we're here right now. So I'd recommend making any notes you want to about that question. And then let's finish out today with one more example. This is problem 69. I guess we got 69 and 420 into one episode here. That's great. If y times, in parentheses, 3x minus 5, division sign, 2, close parentheses. Let me just, I'm sorry, everybody. Let me start that one over. We had some jokesters here in the studio. Every once in a while, some humor maybe is called for. I try to keep it serious, I really do, guys. I'm doing my best. So this is problem 6-9. The problem says if y times, in parentheses, we've got a fraction. Numerator of the fraction is 3x minus 5. Denominator of the fraction is 2. Then we close those parentheses. And then we write the equals sign, and then y to the right of that equals sign. So the full equation is y times 3x minus 5 over 2 equals y. And y is not equal to 0. Then x equals what? Okay, I'll give that one more read. If y times 3x minus 5 over 2 equals y, and y is not equal to 0, then x equals what? Option A is 2 over 3. Option B is 5 over 3. Option C is 7 over 3. Option D is 1. And option E is 4. Like I said, I'd recommend pausing if you want to work on this one a bit. Wanted to include a couple more straightforward questions in today's lesson. I think this is a pretty straightforward algebra question. And those of you who are strong in math probably won't struggle with these kinds of questions, but there's a couple good talking points and a really interesting popular wrong answer, which is 6% of people choosing B as in beta. So let's piece together a good correct solution, give you some tips, and then consider why so many people are missing questions like this. And part of the reason, I know I've said this before, part of the reason I wanted to start this series with some lower difficulty level problems, which we have done in the past episodes, is just to see how easy it is to miss them, and try to help you build some habits early on that I wish I had built early on in my prep. My prep took me about 4 times longer than I thought it should, which was super disconcerting on many, many, many levels. And if you want to know a little bit more about my story, you can head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com. And in the beginning of that training on how to reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time, I'd briefly touch on my story and some of the struggles I had. So if you're struggling, it's many have gone before you, and it is resolvable. Obviously, things worked out pretty well here. So yeah, straightforward question, easy to miss. Let's jump in. If you want some help brushing up on your basic core algebra skills, we've got a Math Basics episode on equations that should really help a lot with that, linked below. But if you execute well on what's in that episode, then this question shouldn't be too bad. First of all, It is wonderful news that we're told that y is not equal to 0, because if y could be 0, we'd have to be super, super careful about dividing both sides of our equation by y, and that's because division by 0 is not allowed on the GMAT. It's quote unquote out of bounds, if you want to think about it like that, or maybe like against the rules, if that resonates more. But the vast majority of questions don't really concern themselves with that caveat. This question is kind of a good example. So, meaning like they don't require you to think about division by 0 and avoid it. It's actually quite unusual that would be like a gotcha moment in a GMAT question. So it's not a huge deal, but it's just worth mentioning and potentially worth memorizing that you want to avoid dividing by 0 on the GMAT. As I said, though, this problem removes that possibility, which means we're free to divide both sides of the equation by y, which is a really nice first move and helps simplify things quite a bit. So on the left, if I divide both sides by y, I would get 3x minus 5 over 2 by itself. And on the right, I would just have y over y, which is equal to 1. From there, we can multiply both sides of the equation by 2 to get rid of the fraction, and that gets us 3x minus 5 equals 2. We can add 5 to both sides, and that gets us 3x equals 7, and then let's divide both sides by 3 to get our correct answer of 7 over 3, which is option C, as in Charlie. Again, if you're just starting out and you want a refresher on how to simplify equations like this one, we've got that linked for you below. I do want to mention that there are quite a few ways to do the algebra steps, so I'm just giving one example of what could be sensible. If you have a more comfortable way of performing those operations that works well and consistently for you, that's great. By all means, do it that way. These are just possibilities and examples of how I personally would think about it. But if you are not feeling so good about your algebra skills, but you feel like you understand the basic like premises of algebra in that Math Basics episode I just mentioned, then using a Gen AI tool can help you generate some drills. That's a great free way to get some practice and improve. You can just prompt the AI chatbot or whatever we're using these days if you're listening to this in the future. Any provider that you like to provide some basic algebra drills for the GMAT, and you should get pretty decent results. If you have a paid program that includes algebra drills, that's great too. But if this one is so straightforward, why are 6% of people picking B, which is 5 over 3? I'm always super disconcerted when looking at the distribution data on these answer choices. Yeah, as always, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't watched like 5,000 people solve this exact question in real time. I'm just looking at the data after the fact. But here's my best guess. I bet that people are dividing both sides by y at the beginning. But instead of canceling y over y on the right-hand side of the equation to be 1, they're canceling it to be 0. That would be my guess. That is something that I have seen happen many, many, many times, and it's really, really tempting for certain types of folks. And if that happens, then after dividing by y on both sides, we would have 3x minus 5 divided by 2 equals 0. If you multiply by 2 on both sides, you get 3x minus 5 equals 0. Add 5 to both sides, divide by 3, you get x equals 5 over 3. So definitely we don't want that kind of thing happening. How could you prevent that? There are a couple ways. Some people like to just write a reminder that y over y equals 1 and not 0, like a flashcard or like a cheat sheet study guide kind of thing. That works. That works. I've had success with that. Other people have better results forcing themselves to write out every step of algebra and double check each one before moving on. I already talked about the value of double checking each step as you go earlier. It's such a simple thing, and people often feel they don't have time for it. But if you watch your clock time and just ignore your like internal emotional timer, then you might be surprised how quickly you can get through problems double checking everything. I've had success with memorization. I've had success with writing things and double checking things. So if any of those resonate with you, I'd definitely recommend doing it, particularly if you ended up picking B on this question. Again, very understandable mistake. We're all trying to learn and improve here. We're not here to judge ourselves or each other, but at the same time, obviously, we don't want to be in the business of repeating mistakes. Making mistakes is how we learn. Repeating mistakes is how we fail. So we don't want that. If you're going to be wrong and make a mistake like that, it's best to make it in practice. Okay. So again, just not being too hard on ourselves. Each mistake we make in practice is generally a mistake we're going to be less likely to make on the real exam, provided that you take action and fix it in the future. Don't just think like, oh, I won't do that again. That usually does not work. So I think that the right mindset here is being the right amount of hard on ourselves. We don't want to tolerate less than our best, which is a very high bar, by the way. We sometimes might have to be much harder on ourselves than people around us might be comfortable with. But it also means not beating ourselves up to the extent that it's not going to help us improve. Like that's obviously counterproductive. So there's a balance there. And that's a balance that, in my experience, all great leaders eventually learn to strike. So I would just recommend using this as a potential opportunity to improve that relationship with yourself, if that's something that sounds helpful or appealing. If you've struggled with that kind of thing in the past, like you're too easy or too hard on yourself, then we've got episodes on how you can fix that. The first one, if you're too hard on yourself, is how to be more balanced in your prep. If you are not hard enough on yourself, then we've got an episode on how to be more disciplined and also how to be more consistent overall. All of those can really help your GMAT prep, perhaps obviously your results and your ability to sustain this stuff over the long haul. Not going to pretend that everybody needs help with that, but I needed a ton of help with that when I was younger and coming up. And yeah, I guess I'm still coming up. I like to embody that that mentality as much as possible, but I'm further down the GMAT path than a lot of people, perhaps, obviously. So yeah, basically, like I think we can all benefit from that stuff. But some of you might not really need it at this point in your prep. I'm just saying I needed it a ton, and that's why I made that stuff, just in case you're one of those people who are like me, where yeah, you like really needed both at different points in the process, and that was for sure me. So I struggled so much with this process, everybody. Like I really don't think I could ever put it into words. But maybe just the fact that I'm doing this for all of you is evident that it hurt real bad, and don't believe that people should suffer that much just taking a standardized test to like make their dreams come true. I think let's just try to make that easier, everybody. So. Yeah, if you don't struggle with any of those things, that's fantastic. I'm definitely jealous of you, and it's definitely a major set of advantages that you have. So please enjoy. I think that's probably more than enough for today. We covered a lot of ground, even though we're still in the low difficulty section, like I mentioned. So my advice is to just ask yourself, what do you want to remember from what we talked about today? If it's important enough of a takeaway, I'd recommend just sending yourself a quick text or email, or just make a little note to self right now if you're on the go. Again, if you have questions about any of this material, or you have feedback about how you think we can improve, you can reach us anytime at the GMAT Strategy on current social channels. We're very open to feedback. We love hearing from all of you. It's a really great group of people here who we get to interact with and support, and all of you, really are up to great things. I guess I can't say all of you. I don't know what all of you are up to, but the vast, vast, vast majority of you who have I've interacted with are super awesome and are doing really cool things in the world. Even if it's just making your own personal dreams come true, I think that's like a very admirable thing to do, actually, like working on yourself, improving yourself. And yeah, feel free to reach out. You can also email us, contact, CONTACT, at thegmatstrategy.com if you prefer email. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the exam, please head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content, and check out our free video on how you can reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time, just trying to help you out. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so please subscribe and please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. Talk to you all soon.